All right, I will, it is 7:01 on March the 15th, and I will call the Finance Committee to order. I'll take a quick roll call. Amy?
Here.
Peter? Here. Paula?
Here.
Rick?
Here.
Bill?
Here.
Aaron?
Here.
Kevin? Zach?
Here.
And Bonnie?
Here.
All right, Jack, if you want to go ahead.
All right, excellent. Thank you, Steve. Seeing as how it is 7:02, I will call to order this evening's special edition of the Norton SelectBoard. Let the record show that 4 members of the board are present. Myself, Renee, Michael, and Meg just joined. Mr. Bramwell could not be here tonight. Thank you for having us on your home turf, Steve. Appreciate it.
Excellent, and welcome. I think it's a good to keep these presentations so that people don't have to repeat. I think it's a good use of time. So thank you guys for joining us tonight. So with that said, the first thing I want to do is Amy, if you wouldn't mind going through real quick some of the outstanding items that we have to date that we're still waiting on responses. If you could just give a quick update.
Sure. So what I am showing as current open items are from as far back as September of 2020. A cost estimate if town hall were to be condemned and we were to have to move to trailers. We had requested the voting schedule for future budget meetings. On 9/28, we requested financial numbers for all, I think, the open tips that we currently have. On February 22nd, we requested the expected operating costs for the new town hall and the Senior and Community Resource Center. On February 8th, we asked for the full savings impacts for the SEMREC transition, not just salary savings, as well as additional plans for the expanded Parks and Recreation hours that were discussed that evening. And then last week, we asked for a breakdown of the legal services expense line.
Thanks, Amy. And Mike Units, do you have any update on the status of those requests?
I can give you some of those now if you want.
Okay, I think if we can, sure, that will work. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, can I just have an inquiry of Amy? Before the breakdown of what were the last two again? I was just jotting them down.
The breakdown, the last one was the breakdown of the legal services expense line, like what exactly are we being charged for other than just keeping KP Law on retainer?
Yeah, and there's the second one before that, I apologize.
Oh, and the one before that was plans for the expanded Parks and Recreation hours that were requested.
Yep, thank you, I'm sorry.
Mr. Chairman?
No problem.
Yeah, Kevin?
Hey, Stephen, just want to let you know I was here.
Yep, we saw you. Thank you. All right, Mike Units?
All right. So we just wanted to go over SEMREC. You wanted to know on the expense side what stayed and what didn't. So if you look at the FY20 communications budget, you can see repair maintenance of equipment remains. The police fire services software is reduced because SEMREC took over most of that. The only amount we have in there is a small amount so they can access old records. Telephone communications remains. Office supplies remains. Seminars and conferences is no longer, training's no longer, educational assistance is no longer, and additional equipment remains. So, you know, the reason that a lot of these things were under communications was because that's where the IT person sat at the time. And the IT person is no longer serving as the communications director. And based on FY20, you can see using those numbers, the savings $306,729. Now, the police chief gave me some information that I'll share with you. Can you see that now?
Yes.
So if you look at this, back the last time we had a full complement at the communications center, just in salaries in FY18, $1,091,665.88 was what we spent when we had a full complement over there. So, I mean, the savings obviously could be, if you based it on that, could be significantly higher than we're showing with the FY20. But obviously, there are significant savings. Any questions on that?
Mr. Finance Chair?
I think this.
I meant, is that Michael Tool and,
That it's been hard for us with the
I'm not sure, I'm not sure who it's trying to come
It's
through.
not, I'm not sure if it's me, but I have a question. Just, Mr. Units, am I correcting that might lower too, because Easton might be coming in?
Easton's already in. Easton, Mansfield, Foxborough, and Norton are all in.
When you gave us an update on this, though, you said there might be another town coming in, or no?
Yeah, they are looking at other towns. They have 2 that have expressed interest. So if another town comes in, our assessment obviously could be reduced.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Finance Chair.
Welcome, Mike. And Michael, units, what's the capacity, number of towns? Is it number of towns or is it volume or what for SEMREC?
It would be the thing that would limit the number of towns would be the space in the building, and they have a lot of space in that building. I know in my town here in Holbrook, they just took on their 10th community. So there is no limit on the number of communities you can take on. It's just a matter of how the space would handle new towns.
And so the underlying premise would be the more towns, the less the assessment would be. Is that correct?
That's what we would anticipate, yes.
Okay.
As we're
All right, thank
spreading out a lot of the fixed costs. Obviously, you're going to have to increase some staffing as you increase the number of towns, but the fixed costs, hopefully, there won't be increasing as significantly.
Okay. And does anyone on the finance committee have questions for Mike at this time regarding SEMREC? Okay. All right.
Yeah. SelectBoard, have any questions?
I think I jumped the gun, Jack, sorry.
We're just feeling each other out. This is the storming part of group dynamics. We're just trying to not talk over each other.
There you
All right. Sounds like we're good, Michael. Units?
All right. And the other thing you were asking about, some idea on where legal goes. So, I mean, I can just show you here a breakdown that we've worked on for this year so far. So labor services, $14,644.50. ZBA, $4,212. They've been dealing with a couple 40Bs this year. The alternate transportation committee, $3,841.50. The charter commission, $3,451.50. Planning board, $7,624. School department, $3,100. Conservation, $15,015. Town manager, $5,986. Reed and Barton, $877. Assessors, $1,833. Inspections, $448.50. Water, $390. Select board, $4,690.50. Town clerk, $331.50, and police, $1,462.50.
Hey, Mike, just to confirm, the legal services, there's no retainer here, it's a per hour.
No retainer, right, it's per hour.
Okay. Does anyone on the finance committee have questions regarding this schedule?
Mr. Chairman,
Zach?
just Mike, on October, the Conservation Commission, $10,374 sticks out in this spreadsheet. What happened there that we racked up 10 grand?
I don't know off the top of my head, Zach. Obviously, it must have been a case that they had that maybe involved court.
And Mike, just overall, is it normal for our legal services mostly to have a conservation representation? I think that was the biggest expense. Is that normal year over year?
Well, obviously, conservation and planning and zoning are dealing a lot with projects that issues may come up that they have to address through legal. So it is, just depends on what the issues are.
Okay. All right. Anyone else on the finance committee with any questions regarding this? Go ahead, Jack. And nobody from the FinCom has any questions.
All right, how about on our side?
Mr. Chair,
Michael?
Michael units, is that a charge back to the water department? Is that do they reimburse the town for that?
They do pay for the direct legal costs, yep.
Okay, so that's just kind of a wash then.
Yep.
Jack, just one question around the questions on the October with conservation. I think Jen is on. Perhaps she can provide some insight into what the matter was during that time frame.
Could, if she's on, I'm sure she doesn't want to talk too much about legal cases, but.
Yeah, I can't go into anything specific about the enforcement cases, but it did involve going to court. And then there were 2 DEP appeals that applicants had appealed DEP decisions. Those are ongoing cases.
Thanks, Jen.
And Mike Units, can you forward these schedules to the committee? Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
If we could get them as well, Mike, that'd be helpful. Can you explain a bit more about what labor services are?
Labor services would be anything dealing with negotiations and contracts for negotiations.
Thank you. I don't see any other questions from our side, Steve.
All right, thanks. Okay, Mike, anything else on the updates?
I think someone had asked about streetlight savings. So I just wanted to show that in FY20, we spent $87,213 on streetlights. And so far through December this year, only $16,601. So switching over to the LED lights has definitely been a savings for the town.
Yeah, Mike, and I think you presented this at our last meeting, but if you could just give the select board kind of overview of what we did, and obviously they can see the savings here.
Right, so this was the LED streetlight program to switch all our streetlights over to LEDs, and we now own the lights. And we did receive about $144,000 in grant money for that conversion, which helped. And so in our budget, now we keep money for replacement of lights and also for the cost of the electricity.
So that line item, Mike, includes repair and maintenance as well as utility charges?
Yes, yep.
And what was the out-of-pocket for the town? It was somewhere around 20 grand, right? I remember it being quite low.
No, it was higher, but I don't know off the top of my head, Jack. I'll let you know.
Okay. Great.
All right, Michael, you need any additional schedules at this point?
Nope, that's it that I have tonight.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, before we move on,
Was that Zach?
yeah, Mike, so who exactly, now that we own the lights, who exactly is servicing them? What department? Is that Keith? Who's doing that?
Well, Keith coordinates it, but we have to have an electric company that services them for us. We're not allowed to go near wires, so it has to be a certified company.
Okay.
So I think it makes sense now if we just go right into the capital presentation.
Open that. So the capital committee met, as usual. We had more requests than we could fund. So each of the departments stipulated what their top priorities were. And so the first recommendation is to replace the Arrow Hive Manager wireless access points. They're at their end of life. They were all installed in 2011, and I know 2 of them have burnt out. So this would cover upstairs and downstairs in the town hall, upstairs and downstairs in the police station, upstairs and downstairs in the fire department. It would be 2 in the highway department, water and sewer, and the council on aging.
Mike, could you give us a high level, without being techno wizards here, what an Aerial Hive is, Hive Manager?
Yep.
Is that?
That's so we can have wireless communication in the town
That's the
hall.
hub. Okay, that's the hub?
Yep.
Okay.
And the next recommendations are for Campita 3. There's 2 recommendations. One is for renovations at the lodge, $30,425. And then Conservation also has a request for $14,400 for some hazard tree and forestry work. There are some hazard trees near trails that need to come down, and this would fund that. And I know that Jennifer is looking at a grant for both of these and trying to get some, so whatever isn't spent out of capital, whatever's funded by a grant would just remain in capital. And I know the work at Campita 3, Jennifer can probably go more into it, but it's some of the soffits are rotted and need to be replaced. And some of the posts holding up the awnings need to be replaced. And also she's looking to install some cameras. Jennifer, more. Anything else to add, Jennifer?
I'm sorry, my phone rang and I was in the other room answering a question from one of my commission members. I'm sorry, what was the question?
I was just saying that the work at Camp Edith Reed, what it would involve, the rotted fascia boards, soffits, and some rotted posts.
Correct. The pavilion in the back needs to be fixed. And then we're proposing to renovate the bathroom that's on the outside of the building so that when campers rent the space, they can use the bathrooms on the outside and not have to rent the inside of the lodge as well. And that's a project, actually just today we got an architect who donated the services to come up with the plans for it. And we're hoping to have Southeast Regional students do the work again.
Nice.
And the forestry, and we're also looking to install cameras, Jennifer,
Correct.
and the forestry trail work.
The forestry work is actually under the stewardship plans. So it's not, some of it is trail work and some of it is actual forestry work under the management plans that we had done a few years ago. So thinning out some of the really dense pine stands, taking out some of the hazard trees so that the other pine trees can grow much better. So in the future, when we go to harvest them, we'll get more money for those trees.
So Jennifer, that was me. So are these specialized services, the forestry, and then we are going to get revenue based on what's being harvested in there? Those are pretty significantly sized trees.
Correct. Yep. And there's actually a grant round that's coming up and applying for that pretty soon.
Okay. All right. Does anyone on the finance committee have questions for Jennifer on the conservation? Or for Mike in the conservation? Okay, Jack, hearing none from our side.
All right.
Thank you.
Yeah, the select board reviewed this at our meeting on Thursday. I think we only had one open question, so unless anyone else feels differently, we'll let you guys run through it and we can chat at the end.
Perfect, thank you.
Next is the request from the police department, and the chief was requesting 3 line cruiser replacement, and the committee voted to approve 2 for now. And the other item that the police chief had, the police station remodel 10,000. He has money available from a previous allotment that was given to him, so he doesn't need that right now. And the next item is to replace the HVAC units at the police department. They're 10 years past their life right now and need to be replaced. And there was a question, would the training program work to cover this? And we decided to leave it in here. And if things move forward quick enough and they're able to handle this under that program, it will be handled under that. But if not, if it becomes urgent, then the chief would have the ability to move forward for this summer.
Okay. All right, any questions? So if it's just gonna be the FinCom reviewing this, we might as well just go through the whole presentation of the capital and then hold questions till the end.
All right, next is the fire department. So they need to replace, I think it's about 1,400 feet of structural hose for $18,110. They want to replace 4 thermal imaging cameras for $54,000. A pumper replacement, it's payment 4 of 5, $140,250. And then, as you know, they're looking to hire 4 new paramedics and firefighter paramedics, and this $18,911 would fund the radios they need. Next is the school district. First item is $65,727. So this is minibuses leased to own replacement cycle. And the next item would be $15,000 to do an asbestos remediation plan at the Henry A. Yell Elementary School. Under highway, payment 4 of 5 on a Peterbilt truck, 36,000. Payment 1 of 5 on a new dump truck that Keith is looking to purchase, 28,150. This would replace a 20-year Volvo dump truck that he has that isn't safe to operate in anymore. The mower, payment 2 of 4, 34,300. And a Holder utility tractor, payment 5 of 5 for 33,000. And under the tree department, it would be payment 3 of 5 on his tree truck, 53,400. And then Everett Leonard repairs, $11,024. A couple issues. One is that the chair lift needs some work done on it to be ADA compliant, and also some repairs to some rotted wood areas at the pool house. Then the sewer department is looking to use retained earnings of $300,000 for the Cobb Street pump station, and $100,000 at the Knollwood sewer pump station. And under the water department, $33,000 of retained earnings to purchase a Dodge Ram pickup. The well 5 and 6, phase 5 completion, $725,000 that they're looking to borrow. And White Street, East Main Street, water main improvements, they're looking to utilize $350,000 of funds remaining from the Reservoir Street project. And just, I know it was asked the other night, water retained earnings right now, they have $2,516,242, and sewer retained earnings $2,472,115. So the total capital requests coming out of capital would be $656,818. Total ambulance reserve, $69,129. The $725 for the well replacement will be borrowed. Out of sewer surplus retained earnings, $400,000. Out of water surplus retained earnings, $33,000. And the other transfers, $350,000. And right now in capital, we have a balance of $332,690. So we'd be looking to also appropriate money for capital at the town meeting from free cash, which the current balance is $1,926,248.
Mike, on the fire department, the radios for the new firefighter or ambulance or paramedics, that grant, it only covers the salaries, nothing supporting them, like the radios?
That's right. It's just the salaries. It doesn't cover outfitting them.
Okay. Does anyone on the finance committee have any questions regarding the capital budget?
Hey, Steve,
Was that Bonnie?
it's Amy, actually. Can you hear me all right?
I can hear you, yes.
I'm wondering, are we thinking we may be able to supplement some of these things that we're not doing once we see our final, supplement? It's not the CARES Act, it's the American Rescue Plan, that's what it is, that we supposedly are getting almost $2 million from. Is that our hope for some of these items, or just wondering? There's a lot on this list that isn't being funded.
Well, without that money, we would always look, once free cash is certified in the fall, to possibly fund some of these things like we usually do. I know we're getting like 1.97 million out of the new fund from the federal government. We don't know what the strings are attached to that yet, so we're not sure what we can use that on yet.
Okay.
And Mike, with that said, regarding the CARES Act funding, what's left over that hasn't been used? I can't remember what the amount was. I know it was a little over $1 million that we got.
Right. It's a little over 300,000 that we have remaining. And we'll be looking at that. We have until December to spend that. And we'll be looking at that. We're cautious about what FEMA is going to cover. We haven't received any money from FEMA yet. So we're cautious about that. We may have to use some of that, the CARES fund, to cover costs that aren't covered by FEMA, but we're waiting to see.
Right, and I know FEMA changed the funding from 75% to 100. Will that change allocation in any way?
On certain items, they did do that, yes.
Okay, and is it potentially, or is it possible that we could use the remaining funds for any of these purchases? To Amy's point earlier regarding the new funding, but what we have already, or has that already been discussed and that's what the budget is?
It wouldn't be possible unless they change the guidelines on those original CARES funds, because they have to be related to COVID.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else on the
Mr.
phone?
Chairman, I have a question, Steve. Can you hear me?
Paul, yeah, go ahead, Paul.
Mike, I have a question about the water capital. So how is it decided what is spent from the retained earnings? Like the 725,000 isn't going to come from the retained earnings, yet the Dodge Ram will.
That is a decision that the water and sewer commissioners would make on how they want to fund these things.
Okay.
And Mike, to Paula's point, was there any conversation regarding that within the capital committee?
There has been discussion on that, and I know we're anticipating that the water and sewer department be represented at the selectmen's meeting Thursday to talk on that.
Okay. Anyone else on the finance committee with questions at this point? Okay, hearing none. I think we can move to the next item, Mike.
I think your next item is school budget.
Excellent.
And
Diana, how are you tonight?
Fantastic. Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good evening to all the different folks that are on tonight. I spoke to Steve, Chairman Evans, earlier today. We kind of tried to establish some protocols to get specifics into the budget. I think the chair, correct me, Steve, if I'm wrong, will anticipate getting detailed questions beyond tonight in writing through the chair to my office, and then we'll respond in writing to the chair to then distribute to the rest of FinCom and publish it in any way that you want.
Perfect, Dr. Bayer. So let me, sorry to interrupt. So that's one of the things I think from the perspective of the finance committee, if we could, I have no problem asking the questions. And I know we just got the budget. It's a $30 million budget that we can review. So we'll get a high level presentation tonight, but if we have any specific questions or questions that aren't answered tonight, if we could forward them to myself and Amy, and we will forward those to Dr. Bayer at the school committee for responses at a later date. I just don't think there's been enough time to fully analyze the budget.
So you received an update earlier today because of a line item in the budget that was originally printed as FY19, and then we just gave you the latest update, and we'll publish the hard copy for you as well. This has probably been, as you all know, as parents and community members, probably one of our most interesting years that I've had as a superintendent in my 12th year as superintendent, my 8th in Norton. Time flies when you're having fun. We decided to take a look at this budget this year from a really somewhat of a different perspective, with an anticipation of coming back with a full return. There'll be some type of rules and regulations in place, I think, still, but in general, we want to return, we want to recover, and we want to accelerate our learning in Norton Public Schools. And a lot of this is going to do where are our students academically, those that have accelerated, those that have done just fine, and then those students that are actually struggling and continue to struggle. And then, of course, the social, emotional, the mental health, if you will, of students. The other part that I think is important as we look at the big picture is we are also looking, as part of our increase within the budget, make sure that we are not just counting on one-time funds. And it's wonderful to have all of these federal funds coming in. We do not have specifics on the new Biden bill yet, because a lot of it is being earmarked to the lowest or highest poverty districts are going to receive significantly more money than Norton will, but I still anticipate that we're going to be over $1 million. That's what I would anticipate, again, based upon taking the formula of the $721,000 we received in the ESSER 2, which is in this budget that we presented tonight. They're saying somewhere around 2 to 2.3 times more. So that would put us potentially in the $1.5 million range. And right now we're looking at expenditures through December of FY24, which is a key part of the concern that I think many of us have about FY23, with all of the money that's coming forward through the federal government, through stimulus, and then, counting on that way too much and ending up with a bigger hole than we would anticipate. Our budget request is a 5.55% increase. On the good side, it's the smallest proposal I've ever sent to the FinCom as an increase. 3.02 of that is in mandated special education and ELL, and the remaining 2.53 is in general education. We are adding some positions. If you take a look, I'm going to scroll down, if it's all right with you, there's the 5.55%, 1.722545 million increase. What I wanted to do is get into some of the specifics. We are looking to expand our mandates within special education by making choices. And as you know, my philosophy about special education, specialized programs, is to create them in-house because, number one, we believe that we can educate the students at a high level, and number two, because it is cost effective. There isn't the $20,000 to $25,000 tuition, transportation charges, and the now on average $48,000 to $75,000 increases from just tuition. So you'll see that as mandates for special education outlined on the left side of your screen, LGN and Norton High School. Then you'll skip down to the para, the school psychologist, the OT, occupational therapist, the BCBA. All of those are what we would call mandated positions. And the remaining positions are to make a 0.8 music teacher at the high school full-time, which helps us with not only our schedule, but also participation. And then digital instructional specialist, digital learning specialist, which currently we only have one. And as you know, everything to do with online has become huge. And then an instructional tech staff. These are teachers who work as computer teachers, predominantly at the elementary level, that would be moved a certain percentage. So, for example, a 0.6 teacher might become 0.8, a 0.97 might just become full-time. It does not add any increased benefits to the town side on those line items either. And then the reading literacy specialist is a direct, if you will, plan to work with, to be quite honest, the proposal originally speaks to reading specialists adding additions of one person to each of the 3 elementary schools at the JCS, LGN, and the Hay. But right now, those would be funds if we saved money later through retirements or in the summertime when people leaving that we would look at, but we just can't put it into the budget at this time. 2.32 positions are under the stimulus fund and school choice for $150,800, and the remaining are appropriations. We are looking at moving a teacher, reorganizing staff as we call it. That means we have an increase in class size in one area, decrease in another, so we move one teacher and move it to backfill. We really are not adding a new position. The always interesting areas of other funding sources. This breaks it down on your left side to predominantly technology, material, supplies, and some staffing around our school choice funds, and on the right side, revolving. Our school choice has gone from 52 students our first year to 168 students this year, bringing in just under $1 million of revenue. And really, with the CARES Act in the fall, in the summertime coming in and providing us the opportunity to move from carts in our preschool K in 1 classrooms into full 1-to-1, we now have the absorption of all those leases. Those were all one-time costs, by the way. And that really made us a 1-to-1 district, because our plan was we were working to get every student into 1-to-1, but we were eating up groups every year versus just the carts in the classroom. And then COVID hit, we were full remote. At one point, we were making all kinds of, hard copies and having parents pick it up and all that way back in March. So this alleviated that through the CARES Fund, and we'll continue by doing grades. So you'll see on the left side expenses of iPads for the LGN JCS, $20,000, 1 grade level Chromebooks. Again, this is what we do pretty much every year. The Chromebook leases, which is what we've predominantly done in our purchase. It's just cost effective within the budget. The staff laptop lease, 200 of them. And then the Chromebooks 3-year for the middle school and the high school with students that are entering on that 3-year phase, if you will. And then the LG staffing, all the staffing notices there, and supplies and materials, which are also coming from school choice, with most of this being everything except that 1.32 position. So that would be the remaining of the digital learning position at 1.0, and then the remaining 0.32. Those are the only staff that we take from there. Most of this is, to be quite honest, materials and supplies that are in some cases in pretty tough shape. On the right side, you have your revolving accounts. And again, you're looking at the school lunch program, the facility revolving, the transportation. All of these are basically, when you look at transportation, you're looking at a projected number of students that are going to take it at a cost of $250. We are recommending a decrease in transportation and athletic fees from $350 to $250. And then the grants, you'll note the nurses grant for $5,000, the early ed, those are very traditional grants that we've been getting. The federal IDEA is our biggest grant. The ESSA 2, the 721, that's fully in this proposal. And then our typical Title I, Title IIA, Title IV that we get an average anywhere between 5 to 10% up or down every year. Circuit breaker is at 60%, 833,000. Right now, that could be a number that comes into the better for us, depending on what the state does. We still don't know what the circuit breaker is actually going to be.
Excuse me, Dr. Bayetta. We do have a couple of new members, if you would mind, on the finance committee. If you would mind just explaining a very high level overall, what the circuit breaker is.
Sure.
And how the grant accounts work. I mean, with the school budget, is it expense contained in the budget, and this is an offset kind of revenue expense, if you don't mind, just high level.
Sure. So the big one for us is always the circuit breaker, which works in the following way. A student goes out of district for tuition, not for transportation currently, although they're working to address that. That student's first $40,000, if you will, we own. It's basically 4 times the state average, if you will. So 10,000 per is roughly what you get from the state. Multiply that by 4, you get a number it's right around 45 now. That's taken off the top. The remaining amount for that student. So if you had a student that's $60,000 and 45 you owe, that means you're getting a percentage of the 15,000 that's left, which has come in as low as 50% in some years and as high as 73, 74%. Most years it's right around that 65 to 70%. And so that's what you get. So if you have a student that costs you $200,000 in tuition, you owe the first 45, you got 155, and you're getting 60% of that back. That goes right directly to the school department. That's how generally the circuit breaker works. In the case of the grants, you'll take a look at, I'll give you the perfect one, the federal SPED IDEA, 240, third one down, 624,000. That is put into our budget and offsets 624,000 of our paraprofessionals in special education. Almost every single penny of that is in that area. Title I at 122.5, it pays for our Title I instructor and teachers that are within that. And by the way, that does not offset the entire cost. So my cost for Title I, I'll give an example, could be $350 for staff. 122.5 of it is put into the total budget, which means the remaining operating budget has the difference. Does that make sense, Steve?
No, it does. It does. Thank you.
Yeah, so here's my issue, right? I'm superintendents, we just spend is the joke. I'm really concerned about the grants coming out of the ESSA, but we couldn't have survived without it, right? When you're running an $800,000 deficit, as we were at one point this year, 800,000 to make up 19 staff members not working, but still in many cases being paid, or then they became remote instructors. So both the state grant that we got and then the ESSA one that we got just basically offset us, and then we still had to find 280,000 or so for the remainder of the year because you had to use that money by December 31st of 2020. So what we did is we moved our line items in order to offset those costs. We also had to backfill for things like transportation. And we can get some more details. I've already been asked for some of those details to get those to you. And then we put everything together within a mandated in general education, and we do so for the very reason that mandates are areas that we have to either A, do it by law, or we have an option to do it in various ways. The example I gave earlier, do you start your own internal program because you have 4 students who need specialized instruction in the elementary grades, or do you send all 4 students out at a cost that would be more than hiring 1 teacher and 1 or 2 paras, as an example. And then you get into our budget, and this is the one that you'll get. That's the difference. It has the actual 2020, then 21, and then the superintendent's budget, and then the increase. What we've added this year is we've tried to resolve some of the issues that some of the veterans on FinCom have had under the notes section, which is to just basically note areas where we either have mandated service delivery or we have things that we've fixed within the budget. So you'll see positives in one line item and a negative somewhere else because we actually moved it to the appropriate line item, i.e. psychologist, i.e. occupational therapy, i.e. a classroom teacher that was an actual adjustment counselor, not a classroom teacher, was in the long item. So you'll see some negatives and positives that seem like huge negatives and huge positives. There's simple corrections to the budget. And then we put in, if somebody's district-wide as an OT, for example, on page 5, you'll see that we've actually utilized that position because that's going to be in 20% of the time in every school, let's say. So that's the way we've broken up the budget. And then you'll see that as you go through it, a couple line items that are potentially going to stick up. If salaries always stick out, I understand that. But some of the ones that we haven't increased in a long time. 4, you'll see here a $40,000 increase, 257%. By the way, I think percentage increase line items like this they don't tell the truth. But that's the way the system works. We plan on having more tutoring available by parent request, teacher request, and potentially even student request. This is something that we are targeting as part of our post-COVID return to school, really taking a look at the needs of students. In the new Biden plan, we're going to be forced to spend 20% on summer extended year, extended day. That doesn't include areas of mandates like special education where all of us are going to see more time. You'll see another line item for tutoring under special education that is also seeing a significant increase. And these are direct related to our response to COVID. I apologize for scrolling down. You'll see when you get to the end of the section, the number of the line. Again, we can speak specifically to any line items that some of you will have. You'll see the fixes that we are going to in the next page. So there's your 3.02. It's an actual 8.21 increase to that actual department. Mandates 3.02 to the budget. When you look at the next page, it's the same idea. So you have here every line item from salaries to things that were moved out, things that are previously in school choice and currently not being funded, or things that we're going to continue to fund in school choice. You'll see a bunch of items where it's supported by ESSR2. That would be that 721 number. That's the equation, if you will, so that you know how it aligns. So it's in the budget, and we can break that down for you further as well. And then, as you look at all these, I have requests thus far from the chair to address what you folks get from the town side, which is a person-by-person salary. That would be base pay, stipends, longevity, and overtime. A further breakdown of mandates. I've talked a little bit about the technology being one-to-one because of what happened with the CARES Act, and then to the town, and then us continuing it within our budget. The flow of revolving accounts is always a big one. That's been a question that we will address in writing through the process that we said would be available. And then I will also, Steve, get a breakdown of our grants for this year that we've received either through the town with the CARES Act or through the Commonwealth, in whatever shape or form they came to the Commonwealth, so that you folks can see where those funds were actually used.
Oh, perfect, thank you. One quick question, I should have asked this at the very beginning, but how are the kids doing overall?
Yeah, so, one of the things I really like to do is, just be as honest as I can about our kids. I mean, we have great kids. I'm happy to tell you, they're great kids. But when you announce we're coming back to school, and those kids came in the next day as part of their hybrid, and they're just giddy as can be. They want to be with their peers, but it's not going to be every child. We're going to have situations of children who coming back to school is an issue of being scared, either because of what they hear, what they know, what's talked about at home, what they hear in school. So we have concerns around trying to make sure that our families and our teachers are speaking to each other pretty regularly. I'll be asking and have asked and continue to ask our staff to be very open to some of the issues that a mom or a dad or family sees at home that we don't see in school. I just dealt with one of these the other day where the child in school is fine, but when they're home those other 3 days, it's not fine. And then we have the flip of that, right? And, as a dad, I'm dying to see my kid back at school 5 days a week. As a superintendent, I have to make sure that we're safe first and foremost. The response to the situation of educators going first, second, or last, or in between, I think speaks to philosophy. And I happen to think that opening schools through people that are fully vaccinated helps the economy, doesn't hurt the economy. I have a lot of parents paying extra money right now to have somebody watch their children on the days that they have to go to work because they're home. We also have a number of students that have been back in school full time, up to 5 days a week, because of specialized academic and social emotional needs via an IEP process. And then we also added more students through our own student support teams and have brought students back over and over again throughout the time based upon a rubric that we created to try to be equitable, if you will. I'm not sure that it is the best equity, but we're attempting to. K-5 is coming back Tuesday the 23rd. And then for the record, the reason for that is I still had day 182 for teachers that I had to do in the contract. So I decided to do that on the Monday. Thereby, I actually pick up another day in June, which I'm okay with this year because I think that will allow for us to actually spend more time with students in June, and maybe this year, coming to the end of the school year, people actually look forward to it. And then lastly, it's about the staff and making sure that the staff feel safe. And that's an opinion. If I ask 100 people, I get 100 different opinions. It is what it is. There's not much I can do with it. As you know, Steve, per our prior discussions, FMLA has been very good. But at the same time, it also leads to a financial impact that we've had throughout this year. And actually trying to find credentialed people to do the job. That hasn't been easy either. We were very lucky because one of the decisions that we made is we made those employees our employees and not, belong to someone else. And by that, I mean, we control them. We tell them what to teach and all of that, and not, especially in the remote. And we do have we had as many as 324 students on full parent choice remote this year. So we shifted into another school. I mean, that's basically a school slightly bigger than the LGN for pre-K through 12. So we had to find certified math teachers, English teachers, general education teachers, special education teachers, in order to backfill those positions. That's been the hardest. So in general, the kids are kids. They're resilient. We're going to have kids with needs, and that's a concern that I have. If I had to predict increases in cost, I would say they're going to be driven around potentially academic and counseling needs, if you will. And I think that's going to have to be some type of a real effort between families and the school departments. One of the biggest difference about working in a city and working in the suburb is your wraparound services. It's harder to find, quote, the wraparound services through third parties such as health insurance than it is, to do it just through the school department. I think we have to find ways to be able to do that. We did put in for an organization over at William James College called the Interface, which actually they pick up the phone, they work with every insurance that you can think of and are able to provide direct counseling services to students via parents. And we actually have employees that have used that service. But it's, in general, it's a service delivery model where we're able to find the third party that can help the family at a cost of about, I think it's $15,000 or $16,000 to the district. But, 2 or 3 families using that pays for itself, because that means it's not our staffing only that's able to work with families during regular school hours.
And so right now, you've laid out some challenges, but challenges that you're encountering right now in FY21 and then potentially FY22, you've laid out some of them. Any others that you might want to mention at this point? And then one of my other questions was going to be, with the purchase of the equipment that we had, either through CARES, FEMA, et cetera, I'm just thinking, and with the reduced week, so it's going to be twofold. Can we expect any potential turnbacks with some of the reduced, so no travel, no conferences, reduced, I'll call it sports type stuff, from a level set when we come at the end of the year? Do you think we could see potentially any turnbacks at this point, or?
I think you're going to see limited turnbacks for 2 reasons. We froze the budget in September for the first time since I've been in Norton. September, we froze the budget. We left it as only safety, if you will, needs of the district. And so we had an $800,000 plus shortfall because we had 19 FMLA situations, which led to the hiring of more than 11 people. I don't have the exact number in front of me, but I'll lay that out as part of our look at 21 so that you can have it. I've asked Matt to start that process. And so what that's led to is the shifting of the monies from one line item to another. We took our transportation costs and we made it $133 because we were only using it 2 days a week, not the $350, which was 5 days a week. So that means we had a negative in that account. We had negatives in our facilities account, which paid for part of our personnel because we weren't bringing in our 6 figures of about $130,000 from champions from using our buildings. We made 66 or 6,800, Matt can correct me, in champions from literally from March of last year until recently, versus 130 plus thousand that we make a year. So we've had to backfill all of those because those were all numbers in our operating budget that all of a sudden aren't here. So we've had to shift those funds around. In terms of staffing, probably the boldest idea that I had, to be quite honest, was probably a couple of them. One was shifting a classroom teacher into the instructional technology to support staff with all this remote stuff that was going on. And then on the other side, it was the addition of the sixth nurse, which was probably, I think, my proudest moment in recent history, because having that sixth nurse, five, so we ended up with a floating nurse. What that cost for us in response to COVID and everything that was going on was that we had a working nurse team, if you will, along with my office and Vinnie Cersei's office in PPS, that really were able to address some of the issues. And I'll give you an example. Without a floating nurse, thanks to Chief Simmons, he was able to get all of our nurses tested on giving the COVID test. Without a floating nurse, it's almost impossible for us to do that. So now if I have an employee who's potentially a contact tracing or not feeling well, they can get tested and almost every time get results back in 24 hours or 48 at most. That's huge for me, because now I get somebody who tests negative, they potentially can come back to work, right? They don't have to be out for the original beginning of the school year. If you remember, we were covering staff on contact tracing or positive 14 days. If you remember how this all started, it was 14 days automatic out. We didn't start with the 5-day testing, come back on day 10 and all of that until right around the Christmas holiday break, if I remember correctly. So from all of last year, but more importantly, from July 1 on, with all of our staff, custodial, administrative assistants, we had situations with administrators. We had to cover those folks with third parties, or myself, I ended up moving into one building, or we moved a teacher into the role of acting principal in order to push back a classroom. All of that has been part of our budget this year. And we have an article for the special town meeting. I'm hoping that we don't have to ask for any monies for the FY21. That's my hope right now. I think the last budget that you received, I think we were in general to the good about $100,000, if I remember correctly. Don't quote me on that, but I think it was right around 100,000 that we were to the good after making all those changes. And we're happy to send those as pieces of information to you so you can see it.
Perfect, thank you.
Yep.
And then from the perspective of the equipment that we voted, again, between CARES Act, FEMA money, where we get all the Chromebooks and everything, and I know you referenced it earlier, but how are we doing? I know you're on a rotational.
Yes. So what we did is we had anything that we had to do with federal stimulus money, we had to purchase, no lease. We didn't have that option, right? We had to, because the number one thing that we had to do with all of that was we had to expend the money and we had to have the product in our hands prior to December 31st of 2020. That was the rule that was given to us throughout the town accountant, through Mike and Matt and myself working on it. So that led to us making those purchases. So if you take a look at it, in most cases, those are 3-year purchases, just like we do with the 3-year lease. So you'll see in our operating budget, in that line that talks about school choice, when you have sections that say leases, those would be a first payment, a second payment, and a third payment. That's what we've been doing since we moved, became a school choice district and started to move towards 1-to-1.
Okay. And my last one right now, but am I reading this right, where on your schedule for other revenues, are you saying that you're using up all of your school choice money into the budget this year?
Correct.
If I'm reading this right, page 3?
That is correct. And that is a concern. That is the monkey, the elephant, the turkey, whatever you want in the room, because it becomes the very true story that I know that the Vice Chair Savas is on the call tonight as well, and Matt's on. This leads to us having to very wisely use any of these new funds that go through FY24 that are coming from the Biden administration. They become crucial for us as a way to stay afloat. If the end story, I mean, we are a school choice district. I anticipate the students are going to be coming next year. We anticipate an increase. We've increased every year by X number of students, on average anywhere between 20 and 30. So the question now becomes, are we able to continue that? Because the elephant in the room is going to be that, $1.7 million is being used.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone on the FinCom right now have any questions for Dr. Baeta?
I have a few if nobody wants to go ahead of me.
Okay, go ahead, Zach.
How are you doing, Joe?
Good, Zach. How are you, man?
Good. Couple of questions. The first one, I was reading a publication over the weekend I think it was Education Week or one of these magazines. And it says say that the Commonwealth is getting $1,830,128,000. And it's going to be dispersed $1,896 per student. Is that accurate? Have you heard
So
of that?
Desi has not informed us of any numbers. There's another publication today that was actually on Twitter that I read yesterday that says that average cities are going to receive between 5,000 and 7,500, and suburbs like us would get 2,500. So I think this is a lot of, there's nothing specific except that the money's coming back to the state, and the state for us, it'll be Desi. They used the Title I formula last time. Now the Title I formula for us hurts us, doesn't help us.
Well, that's what it did state. It did state Title I, and I'm not sure exactly what that means. I think it's got to do with poverty.
Yes, that's correct. And so what happens is, our formula for poverty changed a number of years ago. It significantly, 3 years ago, I think it was, it significantly hurt communities like Norton in return for increases in cities, to be quite honest. I'm not blaming them for that. I'm just saying that's what happened. So we anticipate right now, this is the formula we've been told with nothing written in stone. Whatever your Title I formula for ESSA 2 was, the ESSRA, so that would be the 721,000 that's in the budget. You should anticipate between around 2.2 times more than that 721, which would get us to about 1.5 million in that ballpark, 1.5 to 1.6 million. So we don't have any of that in stone. The money hasn't, last time the money was told, we were told in December, we were told we were going to receive our first payment in February. And I believe, Matt, correct me if I'm wrong, we still haven't gotten our first payment.
The most recent one, we just got the payment at the end of February. We were supposed to get it at the beginning. So everything's just a little delayed. We're not really sure. The information that comes to us is not always great information.
So in your proposed budgets, you're assuming nothing from the federal government at this point?
I'm assuming the 721 and ESSR, which comes from the Trump administration, was the last money that was actually voted. The current one that's coming in, we have not put into this budget at all. And to be quite honest, I'm hoping we don't have to use any of it. I'm really concerned about trying to carry this out into fiscal 23, thereby taking up, I won't say a burden, but less of a hit in our budget request.
Okay, the next one, I'm sure it's not going to surprise you because we've discussed it in the past, is you guys, I'll frame it this way. You guys do a good job at accommodating everybody, no matter what your need is. If, you have social, emotional, if you have disabilities, whatever it is, you guys accommodate it no matter what it costs. So what do you say to those kids that you have, that have these social, emotional issues, particularly with the COVID, and want to participate in after-school activities that, they may be a single parent, they may not have the money, and that they can't due to, financial needs. I mean, we don't discriminate against race, we don't discriminate against handicap, but we do discriminate, whether we like it or not, against, economic, whatever the right term is, means. Your transportation fees and your sports fees are less than 1% of your budget. Why? I understand the budgets are tight. I get it. But why year on year, it's not a priority? And maybe it's not for you, Joe, maybe it's for the school committee, but why is it not a priority to take that out? Because I think it is, discriminating.
So a couple different things, because I think there's really a couple of different discussions here. I think the budget for the first time that you see before you is that the school committee and I are committed to bringing the costs down of fees, and we're doing it. We're going to attempt to do it over X number of years, if you will, and not just the 350 becomes zero, if you will. But the other big, so that's one question, right, in terms of priorities. The other question is, I can assure you that we spend up teen hours in financially supporting families through third parties, not taxpayers' money, but third parties. So $1,000 donation, a $500 donation, a kid, just the other day, if somebody on the volleyball team can't come up with the the $200, we inform our athletic director. We have a third party that can help us with that. Some of it is, giving an example, we had a $2,000 donation from a third party gift account solely for the purposes of things like they can't afford the SAT, they can't afford the AP test, things of that nature, very specific. So that's what we use those monies for. I think in general, we do I reach out to a number of the school committee members and other folks that are, if you will, connected with a lot of the fundraising that happens in town. And I simply say, we have a homeless family living out of a car. This is a true story. We came up with thousands of dollars overnight, to make sure that 2 kids weren't out on the street, living in a car. I think that's a compliment to the community of Norton, not to necessarily the school department. I think we know it. We make the phone calls, we get the money, we are able to exercise support. Sometimes we do that, to be quite honest, as a third party by saying to the fundraising unit, listen, we know of a family, you pay them directly, if you will. You provide the service directly instead of us doing it because it becomes more complicated. We spend thousands of dollars on those types of issues every year. So I do think we are prioritizing the budget around the athletics. I will tell you that when the last, and this might not be difficult to accept, if you will, or might be difficult to accept. I had 3 different people in the last override that all came up to me and voted no, but offered me $350 for the kids to take the bus. Their argument was, I'll give you $350 a year and it doesn't increase every year. I'd rather do that than see my taxes go up. So, which is fine. I accepted the $350 for the record and was able to provide it to 3 families. Because, you're not going to say no to a gift that can help a kid, in my opinion. But that's a little bit of the philosophy as well. I had one family, so specifically, an educator in another community, who said everybody should be paying athletic fees. I can't accept that there's no athletic fees. So there's a lot of philosophical discussions here. I think we're in part 1 of that. And my sincere hope is that these funds are the first year of a number of years of cutting back those fees. I will tell you right now, we're charging $52, Matt, correct me if I'm wrong, for the rest of the year for transportation this year?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay. I can't get people on the bus.
You can have mine. I paid my $52 this morning, Joe.
But I'm just saying, thank you for doing that, Amy. I'm just saying that because right now, I mean, the JCS is a show when it comes to pickup. It's a show. If any of you have any free time and you can go down there and help us out, I'd love to have you. I'll pay you what we can, because it's just, I mean, people are parking at 2:30. The release time is 3:35. And I get it. I know why. Try to get your kid out of school right away and go do the next thing that you have to go do. Your part-time job, your next kid you got to go pick up. We got parents who right now are picking up one kid while another kid is, potentially remote and all of that stuff. Those situations aren't happening often, but they do happen. So that's the big story, 20,000 feet. I don't know if that helps at all.
Thanks, Jim.
Anything else, Zach?
That's it for now.
Okay. Does anyone else on the Finance Committee have questions for Dr. Viter at this point? Okay, Jack, I'll go to you guys.
Thanks, Steve. All right. Anybody on the select board?
Jack, I have a follow-up question for Joe. So Joe, you were talking about in response, I think, to Zach's question, whether or not there'd be any turn back. How, at the end of the year, we had about $300,000 from the CARES Act that we didn't expect that we were going to be able to use, and then we were able to use it. How does it work? Like, I would anticipate that the hiring, the 11 or so teachers that you had to hire because of COVID and FMLA, that would have been covered by CARES. Was that not?
We received, Matt, help me out on this, but we received a separate targeted per pupil expenditure that we utilized for that purpose that had to be used by December of 20. So we used our, if you will, CARES money to target our staffing, but it ended on the 31st of December. Correct me if I'm wrong, Matt.
Yeah, that's correct. We did use it all up. They did extend that to the end of this calendar year, but they extended it on December 29th, which did us no good at that point. We'd already expended the funds. So we covered with that grant, and we had another small grant that came in from the state. We've covered about half of the additional staffing costs that we've had to expend this year. So we're still carrying about $340,000 in the appropriation budget that we have to support with, that was not budgeted, but we're supporting this year.
So are there, with the extension of 300,000, I remember talking to Mike, and Mike will have to speak on this. Are there any monies in that can be reallocated for expenses that you guys have earlier this year?
In the municipal cares funds?
I don't know where the actual money was. I just know there was about 300,000. But
Yeah, so that
I know we asked that question to Mike, and he said he was having a meeting with Joe to talk about if there are additional expenses within the schools that could be supported.
Yeah, so as an example to that, Mike and I and Matt did speak about, for example, we have Matt, correct me on the number, roughly $30,000 HVAC situation at the middle school that Mike sent forward to see if we could get that approved as part of those funds. And it's just a process now for us to see, as you heard earlier, some of those accounts, we don't know if they're actually going to provide us the reimbursement, specifically anything to do with the FEMA. We asked out of the $1.7 million that went to the town on what was called, quote, the Municipal CARES Act. I believe that's what it was called, or I think we all called it the CARES Act. That we got was one, and then the municipal was the other. We went over on our first meeting, we were in the vicinity of about $700,000 in requests, and I think we actually climbed over $1 million in requests. So we had to order all the PPE, we had to order all the filters, we had to do the air quality testing, so on. The latest expenses that we have is in returning to school is some tents. And I don't know if anybody's if you're in the tent business, if you're not in the tent business, I highly recommend you start one. It's about $11,000 a month to rent a large tent. So it's, and again, those are in one of our schools, we don't have a choice because of lunches in order to stay 6 feet apart. But those would be other expenses. And I think Mike, to target what Mike said earlier today, because we don't know if FEMA is going to pay for mine or his line items that we put in, keeping that $300,000 for a little longer is probably not a bad idea. Because if there is a hole, we would prefer to have those funds come out of there, and I'll defer to Mike on this. I would rather see it out there than an operational expense or free cash later on.
I agree with Joe. Definitely a better way to go. Hopefully when we see what they cover in those first 2 rounds that we hope to receive soon, we'll have a good idea of what they're covering.
Okay, but you guys continue to have the discussions, right? That we
Yes,
have this money sitting there and we need to make sure we use it.
Yep. And I'm going at 8/19 on the 15th of March. I got an agree with Joe's statement. I want that on the record.
I was going to say that, and I thought he was going to stop at just those 5 words for a second there. Hey, Joe, this is a silly question, but how much does it cost to build a pavilion? Because I could see some an outdoor type, versus 11 grand a month. I could see having the option of an outdoor.
Well, don't forget, I got to worry about, I love everything to do, but we also have to worry about all kinds of codes and stuff when we go to build that I don't want to get involved. But we are looking, to be quite honest, I asked Wade today to actually look at purchasing our own, because long-term that could be a benefit to the town when we have them, and we could use them for activities, not only on the school side, but town side. We're happy to rent it out to you. Just kidding. But I've been in that business before because I've helped to run a significant fundraiser in my hometown that takes over an entire weekend. And they charged me $750 for 3 days for a large tent. And we ended up buying one for under $4,000. The only thing you have to pay is you got to pay somebody who really knows how to put them up so that your insurance company doesn't give you, and your inspectors don't give you any nonsense. So you pay for the companies to come out and put up your tent.
Yeah, well, you know what? Speaking of that, we were looking for one of the town meetings, right? So I see some partnership there in purchasing a tent.
Right. I think there's tremendous benefits. We went after the I think it's 40 by 60. It's a significantly large tent. We did have the zipper enclosings with the plastic. We did that because there's going to be furniture in there. We want to keep things, as clean as positive. But again, I do think that these are, if we had known about it, or maybe if there's still some leftover money, that's something that we decide to do because it is directly related to COVID in almost every way, shape, or form, and then could be utilized long-term for other things.
Joe, this is kind of on topic, somewhat budget related, but with the return to in-person learning, are there any additional expenses that we're going to see just because of the cleaning protocols?
Yeah, so right now we're in good shape when it comes to our purchases. Thank you to that CARES Act money, municipal CARES Act money, when we were able to purchase out months ahead of time because we had to by the 31st. If you remember, I keep going to that 31st date because they didn't change it until the 29th. So we were able to take care of that. Thanks to Chief Simmons, not only for the testing, but also for 2,400 K95 masks that he just gave us as part of our return to make people feel even safer because it's a higher quality mask than just a cloth mask. And then we have our items for the fall in terms of cleaning. I think our biggest issue that we've had actually is storage of materials, i.e. anything to do with hand sanitizer. You got to be very careful because it is flammable. So we've been able to work out some deals with our vendors to hold on to them, and we don't have them by hundreds of cases in our schools because you can't. The only other expense that I would see would be anything and everything to do with two items that I really don't have much control. One would be any further FMLA issues, including pregnancies, and because those accounts have been zeroed out. I mean, those sublines are zeroed out right now. So that's my biggest issue. You'll see also that in a couple of situations, we've been really lucky with out of district placement, where we've had a couple of situations where families have left, thereby providing us the opportunity to not have as much of a negative, if you will, in those line items. But right now, I would say it would be any FMLA issues we don't know about for the remainder of the year, and they do come up in the springtime, believe it or not. We've also had non-COVID, the biggest non-COVID related FMLAs that I've had since I've been superintendent here. We currently are dealing with significant cancer cases with staff members who have been out. In many cases, they're able to work remotely, which has actually been a good thing, not a bad thing. Unfortunately, they've been dealing with severe medical issues. We've had more of those in this whole COVID March until March than we've had in 3 years combined, which has had a pretty significant cost to us as well. So hopefully we don't have any of those the rest of the year.
I hope everybody's doing well, Joe, to that regard. And thank you. I know you guys have done a lot. Just one final question, if I might ask, only because I know the vaccination priorities haven't been really given to teachers, and there have been a lot of articles on it recently from the teachers coming back and those who want to be vaccinated. What's the status? Does it look like we have a lot of our teachers, at least with the first shot?
Yeah, our staff, thanks to them, to Shannon Taylor, the union, I can tell you of a story right now. I have a high school teacher who basically is able to have 10 laptops open in a room. And at some point she's able to send somebody something and they're registering, like she registered 10 or 12 people last week. We are seeing a definite, people going out. Our industry in general is probably going to have a higher percentage rate than some of the other public industries, departments when it comes to this. It's just something, I think our staff really, believes in. We do have a number of staff who can't take it because of medical conditions. So that's some of that FMLA concern going into the future. And then, really the issue is that, and I know, Renee, you know this because we've had the discussion on the side, the idea that our nurses and Board of Health at the local level can't be doing this because, quote, they can't get us the vaccines is, I just think, misses the boat. But that's my opinion. Maybe I'm wrong. We vaccinate people all the time with our school nurses through the Norton Board of Health with our flu vaccines. This year we even did kids, with the parental sign-off. So I think we're getting there. Thanks to CVS, to be quite honest. I think they've done a tremendous, and others like them. They've done a tremendous effort in every teacher is up at somewhere between 4:30 and 6 in the morning. And the first thing that they're doing right now, I can assure you, is they go to one of those sites and they just hope that as soon as they log them in, they're having their coffee and they're able to register. I went because I have more than two health issues, but the two major ones that I have, I went all the way to Lawrence, Massachusetts. I haven't been in Lawrence since I used to visit my great aunt and sit on her plastic, the plastic covered furniture, So last time that was probably 40 years ago. But you know what? I got a phone call from a sister-in-law, and I went on and I got on, and by the time I was going back to tell somebody about it, it was gone. So I got mine. I got in. They had like 600 openings, and I got in. I'm just happy I don't run my school system this way. I have a lot of flaws and I make a lot of mistakes, but I'm just happy I don't run my school system this way. I'll leave it at that.
Great, thanks, Joe. Appreciate it.
Thank you. I hope to someday see Zoom gone. I know it's here to stay in more likelihood in some way, shape, or form, but the word Zoom has become my new four-letter word I don't like.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask one more question on COVID?
Is this coming from the Ed Digest that you read this weekend?
No, it's from the Inquirer. What is the policy if you have a fully vaccinated teacher and you have a COVID case in your class? They have to quarantine too now, or what is the guidance on that?
Yeah, so the guidance, we're expecting some guidance this week on that, but right now the general guidance has been that at the elementary level, that classroom is still considered a cohort. So if you have a case in that situation, that means you have all kids out, right?
Yeah.
The question becomes, is the teacher considered that although they're vaccinated? And right now it seems that no, that person wouldn't be, but we're waiting to see the actual in print guidance in that. At the secondary level, it's all contact tracing, right? So that's even more difficult. So you could see, like I've said to the parents, and you've heard me, Zach, I know, you could still see a classroom closed down and or a school closed down or a district closed down. The 3 feet situation in non-eating places, which is where we're going to be, and in some classes, we're going to be at more than 3 feet, by the way. We'll be at 4 and 5 feet even, but no less than 3 feet, is still under the 6 foot contact tracing process. So in other words, you've just doubled the amount of potential contact tracing students, because you're still going out that 6 feet in every direction. So you're grabbing more kids because there's more kids within the 6 feet. So we've had districts so far that we have a local district that last week they just went to the 3 feet, or have been. I can't remember how it goes, but it was something like 55, 60 kids in one day in one school, just like that. So I'm hoping that there's some type of a change where the same thing that we saw 14 days, it had to be 14 days. You couldn't be less than 14 days. You had to be out 14 days. Then it became that 5, you can go get tested. Then 10, you can return if you have no symptoms, and so on. I'm hoping that we're going to see some type of a shift, specifically in the classrooms as we're reopening. There are some studies, as you know, as you've heard, that there is not much of a difference of positivity between 3 feet or 6 feet when people are masked properly. The study doesn't talk about eating and taking your mask off in a big room with a classroom. It just talks about 3 feet and 6 feet. So it'll be interesting to see if CDC picks that up.
Well said, Ed. On Friday, I pre-registered myself for a vaccine, and this pandemic is almost over. We're going to be vigilant for a few more months, and we'll get there to the end of the pandemic, and we got to keep off of the things where we talk for a year, and pandemic will be over soon. So we'll be back to normal come summer. Right, everyone?
That's right, Peter.
Well said, Peter.
Can I ask one quick follow-up question? So I know that there are classrooms all over the district where kids are eating snack in class. As we add twice as many kids into the same amount of space, is that going to have to stop?
More than likely, yes. And to be quite honest, as we hear about these quote snacks, we've been trying to be vigilant to say it needs to stop. I mean, that's been the number one thing that I've been saying. Of course, you know, I can't have my eyes in every classroom, neither can a principal, but, you know, as things come up, we're really pushing that, you know, snacks is going to be something. We do have some situations of students who, because of medical conditions, have to have snacks. But in general, yeah, you're going to see a big push that things like snacks are, you know, not something that we want to be doing. Now, we also have situations, and this is kind of tricky. We have the situation where the student is taking their water bottle, you know, they're taking their mask and they're sipping on their water bottle, and they're doing the same thing with a snack. In other words, they have a granola bar and they're doing that. And those are the things that we have to be very careful about, and we don't want our younger students doing. It just creates that cohort situation. Again, at the elementary level, it's so interesting because the moment one kid is positive or symptomatic, you're shutting down the classroom. I mean, that's been the rule since day one.
Yeah, I just know we got a letter sometime early on in the school year that because the sixth graders are such a late lunch at the middle school, they could have a snack. But I'm just going to make mine eat a big breakfast.
Well, one of the things that is going to really be targeted is food services around the classrooms and eating and all that. Again, exceptions are always made because of medical conditions, but that's going to be the goal.
Thanks.
Yeah.
So I wish all the elementary teachers good luck if you pull out snacks for school starting at 7:45 and not eating till 11, because Hangry and Roseanne Barr come to mind very quickly.
Will you come and tell my snack-loving 9-year-old that she can no longer have a snack during school? Because if I tell her, it's not going to go very well.
Well, yes, I can. I think our issue is also going to be that one of the things that we've been very creative about is things like the mask break, where the teachers go outside with the kids, and that's when the kids are grabbing their granola bar. They're having it outside, more than 6 feet apart. You know, I know that that's happening because I've seen it with my own eyes. But with everybody coming back, the classrooms are no longer at 6 feet. And so the diligence of snacks and stuff is going to be go to a larger space. You know, we're going to be vigilant around the safety issues with more people back because that's priority one. To be quite honest, the social emotional coming together is more important right now than a lot of other things. Maybe snacks included, but we'll be creative with things like snacks.
Dr. Mariana, I plan to be there for all the sporting events at Norton High School for the fall too, and spring sports in the fall time, in this coming spring, right?
As a member of the media, remember that, Peter. You're a member of the media.
That's right. So I'm going to be there for all the games, including volleyball. Right?
You got it. Member of the media.
Good.
Attaboy, Peter.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, was it Kevin?
It's Kevin. Yeah, I just had a question for Dr. Valletta, not to get too far afield here, but Dr. Valletta, what's your sense on MCAS? I saw that there was a letter sent from the Superintendent's Association, but do you think that gets any traction at all?
So it's a two-part process. The first thing that has to happen is that the federal government has to say, you don't need to take a test this year. Then the second becomes our commissioner, our Secretary of Education, and our governor have a say in it, right? So right now, what they've said is we're not going, we still need testing. That's the federal government. However, we're going to give you windows of opportunities, of which you've already seen one shift. And the reason was, it was slated that the very date that the commissioner announced we were coming back to school, our third graders, fourth graders, and fifth graders were going to be testing on April 5th. It was a political nightmare. I mean, that's not a lot of people are saying that, but that's a fact. So now we've shifted it into this May, June deadline. There's also discussions about doing it in the fall. There's a lot of push on the president's new secretary to simply say, you know, this is a $30 million cost to the taxpayers of the Commonwealth. It's not $1 million, it's not $2, it's $30 million. And our Superintendent's Association came out against it. Our Norton School Committee has come out against it. I've been anti-MCAS. I think testing is good, but I think one test is not right for kids. I think they need multiple ways of being tested. And I don't consider the MCAS test as a true diagnostic test. It's a summative of what you're supposed to have learned in a year. And I don't know how we're using that, especially if the kids are going to test and I'm not going to see any of this information for months. So that's where I stand on it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for Dr. Baeta right now for this presentation from anybody? All right, hearing none, Dr. Baeta, thank you very much. Unless you have anything to add, thank you very much, and we will be in touch.
Yes, I look forward to it. Thank you as always for your volunteering on a committee that I know you guys get a lot of stuff you have to deal with. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Have a great night. Be safe.
Yeah, you too.
Thanks.
So for select board members, if you guys have any questions about the budget as you go through, we'll follow a similar process to what FinCom has done. Just send your questions to me and I'll pass them on to Joe for response.
So I think with that said, Jack, I think from my perspective on the FinCom, I think the next thing we'll do is really just going to review some minutes. I don't think we have anything on the agenda at this point. So I don't know if you guys, you're more than welcome to hang in there, but you probably have a lot of other things to do and listen to us go through minutes. So
we were told there would be karaoke. So when does that start?
Aaron, I'm gonna let you take that one.
After the minutes.
I'll leave it up to Renee. She's our resident karaoke queen.
I heard drinks were being delivered too, but I haven't heard a knock on the door yet.
I think it's I think it'll be fine for us to adjourn. Thank you very much for having us and the hosts. And we'll do
and I think we'll be
Yeah.
we're back again next week as a joint, correct?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Let's be formal about this. For the select board meeting, Chair would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All right, we'll do a roll call. Meg?
Yes.
Michael?
Aye.
Renee?
Yes.
I too vote yes. Again, thank you, Steve and FinCom members for being such gracious hosts. We'll see you soon.
Yes, thank you guys for joining.
Thank you, guys.
Be
Have a
safe.
good night.
Good night. Thanks, Steve.
Thanks, Michael. All right, for the FinCom, I sent this out, and Amy sent a reminder about some pre-reads for our minutes. I'd like to go through those. I know Zach had reached out and pointed out on the 25th, as I did as well, noting that Walter was still listed as a participant on the FinCom, so I know Pat will correct that, and I know Zach identified the spelling of his name. So what I will do is, if it works for everybody, I will go through the minutes that we had, the earliest ones, with January the 25th. I don't know if anyone has any questions regarding those other than what we just referenced. Again, Walter showing as a member of the FinCom and the spelling of Zach's name. Zach, could you just real quick, so Pat can take that from the recording, if you just spell your last name for her?
Just like it is on the screen, T-S-I-L-I-S.
Okay, thank you. So I don't know if anyone has any other questions regarding the minutes of the 25th, changes or anything?
Mr. Chairman? Bonnie?
Go ahead, Bonnie.
I just, under where it says committee update,
Yeah. The permanent building committee instead of school?
Yep.
Yeah, thank you. So for Pat, I know one of the things under committee updates, where it says school committee under committee updates under section E, part 2, that should be permanent building committee. Is that correct, Bonnie?
that's right.
Okay, thank you. And Bill?
Yeah, Steve, I don't think I was there on the 25th.
Okay. Okay, and we'll note that as well. Any other questions on the 25th? Okay, hearing none, I will call for a motion to approve the minutes of January the 25th, 2021.
So moved.
Chairman,
I heard a motion. Is there a second?
second.
Any other conversation? Amy, I just want to clarify, were you trying to make a motion or a second?
I was gonna make the motion, but
Okay,
someone else
all right.
did, so
Thank you.
it's all good.
All right, any other conversation regarding the January 25th minutes? Okay, hearing none, I'll call for a vote. Amy?
Yes,
Peter?
Aye.
Paula?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
And Bill Rotundi, you'll abstain, correct?
Yep.
Aaron?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
Zach?
Yes.
Bonnie?
Yes.
I am also a yes. And just to note, the motion was to accept the minutes as amended by those various discussions. Name changes, title changes, and removing Bill Rotundi from being present at that meeting. All right, thank you guys. That's unanimous. We will go to the minutes of February the 8th. We'll use the same protocol. Any discussions on the minutes of February the 8th?
Steve,
Bill?
I believe I was present but not listed.
Okay, and we'll confirm that with Pat because she's taking it from the recordings, Bill. I just don't remember when she started. I know she's taking it from the recording, so I'm not sure when she started on that, but we'll confirm that.
Mr. Chairman,
Rick?
just have an edit. Be under, Department 420, 423, Highway Cemetery Snow Removal. Mentions, SURG, S-E-R-G-G. It's an acronym. The correct acronym would be S-E-R-S-G.
Okay.
And then, I noticed under Fire Department 220, 230, and 240, if you could change Mr. Simmons to Chief Simmons.
Okay. And Rick, if you don't mind, do you know what the spelling is for the acronym SURGE?
Yeah, it's Southeastern, one word. Southeastern Services Group.
Southeast, is it Southeast Regional?
Yeah, Southeastern Region, right, Services Group.
And then okay. And I think, I'll talk to Pat on that. One of the things is if we can get away from the acronyms or at least identify the acronym out front somewhere, that's.
Yep.
Okay. Anything else on this one, Rick?
Not that no.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone else have any changes, recommendations on the minutes for February the 8th? Hearing none, I'll call for a motion to accept the minutes as amended
So moved.
for February 2021. Thanks, Amy. I have a second. Is there a second?
Second.
Thanks, Zach. So I do have a motion and a second. Any other conversation, discussion on the February 8th, 21 minutes? Okay, hearing none, I'll call for a quick call. Ready? Amy?
Yes,
Peter?
Yes.
Paula?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
And we'll confirm, Bill, the attendance and we'll adjust accordingly. Okay?
I just checked my attendance
Well-
record, Steve, and Bill was at that meeting. Nobody was absent that night.
Okay.
Yeah, well, on page 2, third sentence, fourth sentence from the bottom, I asked a question, so
Okay.
I was there.
You are good. You are good. So maybe you did do that.
Sure you didn't mail it in.
Aaron?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
Zach?
Yes.
Bonnie?
Yes.
I'm also yes. Okay, thank you. That's approved. We will go to the minutes of 2/22. And just as a reminder, there are no 2/15 minutes. That was the holiday. So we didn't meet that day. Well, I will go to the February 22nd minutes. Any changes, discussion, recommendations on these minutes? Okay, hearing none, I'll call for a motion to accept the February 22nd, 21 FinCom committee minutes.
So moved.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
A motion and a second. Any other conversation, discussion? Hearing none, we'll go to a vote. Amy?
Yes.
Peter?
Yes.
Paula?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
Aaron?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
Zach?
Yes.
Bonnie?
Yes.
And I am an abstention. Okay, those minutes are approved. We will go to the minutes of 3/1, FinCom Finance Committee minutes of March the 1st of 21. Any conversation changes on those minutes? Okay, hearing none, I'll call for a motion to approve the Finance Committee minutes of March 1st.
So,
I think it was that Bonnie?
yes, it was.
All right, do I have a second?
Second.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the Finance Committee minutes of March 1st. It's a quick vote. Amy?
Yes.
Could I just,
Rick?
I'm sorry, I just noticed something, going through it. Under Department 135, Town Accountant, James's last name is spelled, incorrectly.
All right, thanks, Rick.
That would be, from Puella to,
Puello.
Okay, thanks, Rick.
sorry.
Oh. So that motion to accept these minutes as amended. Okay. Why don't we make it official? So what
All right.
we'll do, we'll go through and we'll look for, so for the Finance Committee minutes of March 1st, do we have a motion to accept those minutes as amended?
So moved.
We have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
That was Bill. Let's go to a vote. Amy?
Yes.
Peter?
Yes.
Paula?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
Aaron?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
Zach?
Yes.
Bonnie?
Yes.
And I am a yes. To accept the minutes for March 1st have been accepted. Was anyone or everybody able to review the minutes of March? I know they just went out, I think it was either yesterday or today.
I
Was
have,
everyone to review those?
I have none.
Okay, so we'll hold off right now on March the 8th, and we'll have that for our next week, sorry. So I just wanted to rehash, so next week we are having another joint meeting with the, SelectBoard, and we'll have Southeast Regional and I think, Bristol County with their presentations at this point. And then what I'd like to do is, if anyone has any questions regarding the school budget as we go through the budget, there's a lot of information there. I think Dr. Bayet and his team are going to be sending some other information along to us. If we could, I'd like to have those questions, any questions that we have, sent to myself and Amy by end of day Monday, if that's doable. So we can get those questions in, because I'm going to talk with Mike and anticipate his recommendations should be available. If not next week, we'll definitely start the week of the 29th. All right. So, but I'll firm up those so we have some action steps for the 29th. And I know Zach had requested we have kind of a general conversation about, one, the budget itself, what we've heard, and kind of the task at hand. So we will have that next week after the Southeast Regional and Bristol County give their presentations. So if Mike is ready at that point for his recommendations, I think if everyone agrees, we could probably start reviewing some of those smaller budgets. And then going forward, what I'd like to do is have joint meetings as we go through some of the articles, especially planning board, any bylaw changes, things like that, with the select board, if the schedules fit, just so we don't have to keep going through these presentations twice and waiting on recommendations and thoughts and things like that. So that's kind of the plan going forward, if that makes sense, or people have any questions going forward, we don't ask them tonight. We can just forward either again to myself or Amy.
Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead, Rick.
Yeah, maybe I missed it. Did we go over the animal control department? I don't think we did.
I don't believe we did.
I will review that and get back to you, Rick. I'm not sure on the on one of the meetings I missed. So I will confirm that to make sure we've gone through all the budgets.
I don't believe you did.
Okay.
We were sent the budget, but then we put it off to another meeting and we haven't revisited.
Okay.
Right, because the dog officer couldn't attend that night.
Okay. And I'll go through each one, make sure we've heard of everybody or anyone who wants to give their opinion. The other thing we had too is we did request information from Park and Recs, and the director did provide a schedule that they forwarded to everybody last week with the minutes. So we have that that information that we requested, and then I know Amy will update our request lists tonight if we have our information, and we'll go through those again, and if we can, let's send those to Mike, because we still have some things that are getting a little on the long end of the request, but we can find out when we can expect those.
Thank you for keeping track of that, Amy. That's really helpful.
No problem.
Mr. Chairman?
Zach?
Do we know at this time if there's a shortfall, I mean, what that number is overall? If, we have $1 million problem, if we're gonna be covered, I mean, has there been any discussion on that?
No, that's one of the conversations I will ask Mike to address next week, where we stand with that, and provide his updated schedule. All right, I can't remember the last time he actually provided that, so I will ask him for that.
And also, Amy, can you put on your list, we had asked him for a cheat sheet of all the savings, the various savings, whether it's, I know he showed us the lights, the light savings, and there was some savings on health insurance, the health insurance holiday coming up. Just a synopsis, a one-page spreadsheet of, we saved $1 million over the previous year, whatever that number may be.
I will add that right now.
Thank you.
I think that was on there, Amy.
It was on for SEMREC, but it wasn't on for everything.
Okay, that was I thought I saw that under the health insurance question. Okay. Does anyone have any questions or conversation they want to start tonight? I keep thinking of Tom when I look at a little bit before 9 o'clock, so. I will, if we have nothing, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. I'll go to a vote. Amy?
Yes.
Peter?
Yes.
Paula?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
Aaron?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
Zach?
Yes.
Bonnie?
Yes. And I would love to imagine what Mr. DeLuca's expression would have been when someone asked if there was any new business or discussion at 8:55 p.m.
Thank you guys very much again. Appreciate it, and we will meet again next Monday with Select Board as well. Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Have a good week. Good night.
Everybody.
Good night, everyone. Good night, all. Good night. Good night.
The recording has stopped.